Thanks. I know we stand between you and lunch, and I know it's a busy conference. Everybody's juggling a lot of things, so I'm very, very happy to have all of you here. Really thankful for that. And I know we have many different, industries and people coming from different, background coming, and also lots of players in the ecosystem working across urban climate and other initiatives as well. So warm welcome to all of you. Given that we are in a little bit of a tight schedule, we'll skip the introductions. Otherwise, typically we go around the table and do a quick round of introductions. We'll kind of skip that for now. But I hope that you all get enough time to, as we go through a bit of a discussion, we get enough time for this, to get to know who you are. So if you are asking a question at that time, maybe very briefly, if you can introduce yourself, that'll be useful. Yeah. A big also thanks to CSR Box, for their support, and Omidyar Network India for helping us put this together. A big part of the focus of the agenda for doing this roundtable is to really see how we can bring in a lot more resources, knowledge, tools, technology, all of that stuff to support urban development from a CSR context perspective. As you're all probably seeing, India has now enough. I mean, this is what we're going to talk about today. We've roughly, the data that's floating, which the MC also presented, is close to 1.84 lakh crores in CSR that's being spent, over the last 9 years. But we need to bring in a lot more focus onto urban development. A lot of that money has not yet, only recently as environment sustainability has become a recent phenomenon. Last 4 years, you've seen monies coming into the environment piece a lot more. But also trying to move that to make sure that we are able to decongest our urban pockets, I think becomes very, very important. Especially there are certain sectors like technology, and it's not surprising that a lot of you here are coming from the technology background or technology sector. This is something that a lot of the ecosystem in the IT space are especially looking to help kind of solve. Why urban development is important, and what are some of the things that we can do to solve for the challenges in the urban development ecosystem. What we also did was a lot of research, and there are some material that's already in front of you, and we'll share some of that stuff. We were also able to see what others are doing in the ecosystem, how they're partnering with what projects they're doing, how they're able to kind of do it collaboratively in some cases. And yesterday we were talking about some of the things that, especially the IT industry, the NASSCOM ecosystem has done very well in bringing together stakeholders, be it in terms of, let's say, rejuvenating lakes, managing waste. I've always looked at Electronic City as a wonderful example of where I think models of urban development can be done in a really strong way, because you're able to bring a whole bunch of folks together. And also, we've almost kind of put in a very, very simple, and I'll share in the end, kind of a framework of saying, if you have so much money and this, sectoral interest, what could be the type of projects you could do, as well. So it almost becomes like a toolkit kind of an approach, so that you're able to fit this across your budgets, and of course CSR is all about, there are people with spending 50 lakhs to 500 crores, as we all know. Everybody can contribute strategically if you're able to kind of look at it from a strategic lens, perspective. So just overall, so that's the agenda, and we will first listen to Shreyansh from Omidyar Network to tell us why Omidyar is interested in this, what all the stuff that Omidyar has done in this space. And Shreyansh himself has spent a lot of time working on these initiatives to share from his perspective. Then we will get into the details of some data and some research. And very quickly, I'll talk about the framework and leave you with a small toolkit. post which we can get into discussions, you know, and we want to spend as much time hearing from especially CSR. So, you know, if it's okay, I'm going to prioritize. I know there are many different players here, but I would prioritize in the roundtable to listen to some of the CSRs who are here on what they're doing from an urban development perspective. So I request, and I request my NGO friends to bear with me, you know, as we give that space to CSRs to share, and then you'll know who to go to for funding, right? That also works for you in that sense. So that's how, you know, we'll play today, you know, at this point. So over to you, Shreyansh.
Thanks, Krishna. So a quick introduction about Omidyar Network India. We are effectively philanthropic capital of Pierre Omidyar, who's an ultra HNI and based out of the States. We leverage that capital for venture investing in India, but also system level interventions, right? And one of our critical focus areas is urban development, and we'll dive deeper into why and what of it for a bit. So we have actually been operating in the space of urban and cities for a while now, right? It's 2014 onwards. The nomenclature around it would be very different. So we would look at times at spaces called governance and citizen engagement. For us was a key focus area. Then it evolved. The strategy evolved to look at civic tech as a space, right? And then we landed at this particular evolution of the strategy, which is called advancing cities. And the reason was we realized, just given the challenges around us, we needed much more refined articulation, fine-tuned articulation of why urban as a space is really important, right? Our key learnings from the work done over the past decade in the space has been that there's only a very limited window of opportunity, right? Just given how increased consumption is happening, there's increased migration to urban areas, the level of urbanization and the rate at which it's going to happen, if we do not take care of it in this particular window, it's going to be irreparable for us in some form or the other, right? And at some level, I think we are all starting to feel the pains of it, right? We plan our work days basis the traffic, right? At times our cities run out of water, right? The air is a constant irritant and a constant health challenge. So how do we solve for it became a key question that we were trying to answer at Omidyar. So that's why we started focusing on key areas. The first one was ease of earning. Yeah. This became our sort of critical pillars that we started looking or broke down the urban development as a space, right? Which was first one, ease of living. How can we leverage technology and digital solutions for improving service delivery to citizens? Ease of earning. Cities effectively act as huge drivers of economic growth. So how do we improve MSME productivity, the productivity of gig economy workers and laborers that are operating in an urban context that effectively leads to job creation? And third, resilient infrastructure, right? Well, how do we improve the quality of the infrastructure such that, at least especially in current context, the risks due to climate change reduces, right? Or they have improved adaptability and improved resilience. And we decided within these three key pillars, the kind of interventions that we could possibly make for ourselves, right? Because we look at system level interventions, we are effectively a catalytic pool of capital around which we try and mobilize other pools of capital. We said, so for example, I will give you a very specific example around digital tools. We supported the development of something very specific called City Finance as a platform, if you know of it, which allows all the cities to upload their audited financial statements onto that particular platform. Now, what that allows one then is to create innovative financing instruments for cities themselves, right? One of the current big challenges is most of our cities are out of budget. They don't have their own money to spend on any local piece of infrastructure that they want to create. So, even if you call your municipal commissioner, right, and say, hey, we require a small piece of road, or even a small park, or a footpath that needs to be created in and around my corporate area and office area, so that it improves my employees' walkability in that space, they probably won't be able to do that because they simply don't have the budgets for it. This particular platform allows one to understand how the cities are financed and create innovative financing instruments that are able to support them. We look at, again, blended pools of capital that we can tap into, create instruments out of for systemic interventions. Under ease of earning, we have very specifically looked at MSMEs, how to improve their productivity, and hence we contribute actively through various studies and reports in terms of economic planning. And then under resilient infrastructure, we have again effectively looked at the kind of interventions that we can make to improve state capacity, right? State departments, city departments operate in extreme silos. How do we break down those silos, improve their ability to operate for the benefit of their cities and municipalities? There, very specifically, we also looked at built environment. How do we improve their resiliency and their response to climate change events? And again, also natural disasters. So these kind of interventions are effectively where we decided as a setup, as a team, that these are the kind of system level interventions that we could make. There are roles for other kinds of stakeholders across the entire value chain, right? And today, I think the objective is to dive into deeper the kind of roles that each one of us can possibly take in this value chain of urban development, right? I think, yeah, these are some of the examples, and we have already covered it. Just a quick one, maybe I can call out a couple. C40 Cities is a huge climate think tank. We have supported them in terms of climate action planning for various cities in the country. And so it's become benchmark sort of a play that can be replicated across multiple cities now, right? That's our focus. We have actually also seeded UCAN, which is an urban collective of think tanks and grassroots organizations. And we have Siddharth, who's from UCAN as part of the room also. We actively work with other organizations like WRI. We have funded project preparation studies for them. But like I said, right, each one of us has possibly different sort of roles that we can play from the nature of the pool of capital that we have, right? And I will leave it to Krishna for us to dive deeper into that.
Thanks a lot, Shreyans, and thanks for the continued support. Siddharth, if I can request you to just quickly, maybe say a few words about UCAN, in terms of, here's just an example of how a collective, collaborative ecosystem of players working in urban could potentially come together, to share resources and potentially create that impact. Just a couple of.
Thank you, Krishna. And thank you, Shansh. Just quick introduction. UCAN, which stands for Urban Collective Action Network. It's a network of about 12 organizations which have been working for anywhere from 2 decades, working with the governance mechanisms to be able to do service delivery, to be able to build systems within the government to carry out projects, and also do policy sort of formulation. And these 12 organizations have come together to form a collective because the increasing recognition that the problems complex of climate change, water, requires a systems approach to cities, right? Cities are now increasingly becoming complex systems. And so to be able to work across organizations and become a big tent for everything that's urban is what UCAN's aspiration and what the founding members have done. We also want to focus our efforts on tier 2, tier 3 cities, there are about more than 3,000 tier 2, tier 3 cities, which are now starting to get very urbanized. And the dearth of human resources, financial resources, intellectual resources is gonna, if we don't address them right now, over the next 10 years, as Shreyan said, we will be looking at a very sort of irreversible crisis. So we wanted to just expedite that. Yeah. And I'm happy to hear to, after the event, to interact and ask more questions, answer any more questions.
Thank you, Lars. So I think just from a, when you look at it from the lens of urban development, just highlighting a few points that came up so far, right? One, there's a lot of urgency, and that's what, we kind of see from all the points and the initiatives that we just talked about. Second, there is today, just from a investment point of view, there is a gap, and there's hence a role for strategic, role for philanthropy to play and CSR to play. And I think a lot of the folks here, we all live in urban centers. We have offices in urban centers. We have people working in urban centers. And for people, some of you have, I know, I come from Bangalore. 2 days ago, Bangalore was shut, right? We couldn't handle the rains. The schools were shut, the colleges were shut, and, the entire IT ecosystem was shut, right? We all worked from home, on Wednesday, I think it was, right? So that's what we're all living with, right? So there's that sense of urgency plus the sense of, action, but at the same time, partnership and the role to be played by philanthropy and CSR becomes then, very, very critical. So I think it's, there is a lot of theory behind, what is urban development and stuff. So we will not get into too much of that detail. Here I want to talk more about examples and the stuff that's happening, but it's across three clear kind of spaces of, obviously there's infrastructure, spatial, which is both public infrastructure and from an environmental sustainability point of view, including waste management, lots of, work happening around sanitation, water, and other things. Economic development is very important in urban, and today climate change again is a big driver of that. Interestingly, one of the, I don't know if there's any representative of HT Parekh here. HT Parekh Foundation has now started focusing on economic development from a heat stress perspective. How do you kind of deal with livelihoods from a heat stress point of view? Because today there's a lot of impact on construction workers, gig economy, and many other parts of the ecosystem from a heat stress, point of view. So there's a big connect to economic development. Obviously, most of urban centers are very, very high economic zones. Plus there's a social element to this, in the sense of social development is important from, safe spaces to providing, from a women, children, elderly perspective, and also a lot of preservation of culture as well. We don't want to be like every city, kind of looks the same kind of an approach. We have to kind of retain a little bit of Bangalore, a little bit of Mumbai, a little bit of Delhi, a little bit of, our own cities, as we build urban infrastructure and stuff, right? And creating those culture centers becomes very, very critical. So these are the things that gets, broadly covered. There's no surprise for any of us. I'm sure all of us know, the fact that India's urbanization is at a very, very rapid pace. And unfortunately, it's happening in a way where it's very, very concentrated, right? I mean, again, taking the example of Karnataka, there is Bangalore and there's nothing else. There's literally the next city, is just probably Mysore, which is much, much relatively smaller compared to the challenges of Bangalore. And as the new states are developing, as people from like MP, Assam, and Jharkhands of the world are developing, your urban planning and urban development will have to be planned very, very differently. Otherwise, you'll start creating very concentrated problems. But urbanization is on the rise. So you're just not going to get out of that. It's irreversible, in some ways. So this will require then Samaj Sarkar Bazaar to come together, right? You need civil society, you need, the business ecosystem, and you need the government to kind of come together. This is also becoming a challenge from an ESG perspective, because carbon footprint is something that everybody, interestingly are playing through. One of the large global banks, interestingly, they put up a net zero target globally, but more than 40% of their workforce is in India, right? Because this is the back office of their entire global operation, right? So if you're 40, 50% of your, and carbon footprint, whether you're in India or in New York, is almost the same. It's not going to change significantly. It's probably a few percentage points here and there. So now you're talking about dealing with your ESG goals also from this perspective. Again, there are many initiatives that different ecosystems have started. Nandan Nilekani himself has started an initiative called Ashore, which is bringing together a whole bunch of green buildings and other initiatives across multiple geographies and multiple industries, where they're really trying to take the best practices that the corporates have had in India on their own office workspaces and replicate it significantly through good documentation and good convenings and things like that. So not only from a philanthropy perspective, but even the targets that all of us are setting has to do with our urban operations in many, many places, because that's where we are hiring and building people. And if we don't have some of these things done in terms of the way the spaces are built, the way our people are engaged, and the whole mobility around this, I saw some of our mobility partners, we don't have anybody from the car industry or the mobility industry here yet, but we had some of those people who wanted to attend. Those guys are also trying to solve this from a mobility, challenge perspective, and how do you bring in much more sustainable, easier mobility solutions to be able to deal with some of these, challenges. So, of course, all of this leads to more work for all of us, and again, more data in terms of where are some of these challenges in India, what needs to be done. I'm sure you'll find, a lot of this research on high-risk zones and where is more urgency and where there is some work happening. And in the document in front of you, a lot of this content is there, right? Like I said, I want to focus a little bit more on examples of hence what is being done in some of these cases. So we'll talk about some examples, and I have Bhaumik here, who also, firstly, wonderful conference. Congratulations, Bhaumik. And in terms of some of the work that's going on, and case studies, want to kind of present a few of them so that we are able to kind of talk through that stuff. But just from a CSR point of view, obviously all the big numbers are there, but unfortunately not enough going into urban development. That's the key challenge that we are trying to address, right? You look at all the big numbers in CSR, we are not yet spending enough money in, urban development, and especially on environmental, kind of ecosystems. So that is where we need to really bring in better distribution of CSR monies to address problems that are a little more urgent in a way that can be leveraged, and can be, built better. So, Bhaumik, wanted to, hear from you on how you're seeing projects in urban development evolve, and I think you have one case study that we wanted you to kind of share a little bit about, as well.
So I'll stand up. Hi, good afternoon, everyone. So there are two examples which I want to talk about from this lens of urban resilience and urban climate resilience building. One is about collaboration and multiple stakeholders coming together and working on providing solution for one particular type of problem, or a cluster-based approach. One example, while I will go to this example later on, I want to build on for this. We recently launched Godavari initiative with support from multiple corporates and having interest coming from the government and other stakeholders side for Godavari River Basin conservation. The key aspect of the entire initiative is how multiple stakeholders come together and have single objective or single charter to work on for next 10, 15 years. It's not about 1 year, 2 year, 3 years. And the process part is that everybody's equal player in this entire process, where companies are trying to coming from the funding lens and build programs in the entire geography, which are ultimately contributing towards resilience building on sustainability side. The entire part 1 of Godavari River Basin, which has a stretch from Nashik to Nanded, 9 districts. There are 8 large municipal corporations of Maharashtra which are situated on this. And when you think of urban resilience point of view, there are a lot many duplication happens when there is no structured plan coming from corporate, non-profit, and urban bodies side. Especially because water, river, or urban resilience depend a lot on what an urban authority is going to decide for next 5 year, 10 year, 25 years plan. What climate change cell from the state department will decide and plan for next 10, 15, 20 years. what is being done by municipal corporation, money coming from the central government, money coming from the state government. So how do we provide them support coming from the technical support, the futuristic infra building support coming from the such collective platform where corporates and technical agencies are part of it. Uh, Most of the urban cities which we have in India have a lot of cultural aspect around that, a lot of economic aspect around that. So how do we take cognizance of all these aspects and build infra, keeping all those elements in mind? So what we are working on in that, we really map all the next 5-10 years ka infra plan which is there with the municipal corporation or urban development authority. And then we go to corporate and tell them probably you don't have to invest in this infra side. What you have to invest in probably helping them better design this entire infra and provide some kind of consulting and support coming from either CSR side or your sustainability side. So that's where we are entirely working on the Godavari initiative. On the other side, the same corporates are funding on peripheral area to create projects and program on agriculture, on wash and sanitation. Because when you work on such model, you cannot discount of the peri-urban area or other area which is ultimately creating pressure on the urban cities. So you have to also then look at how we are catering to peri-urban areas. So that's where this collective action platform kind of Godavari initiative, it's a brand agnostic platform. So it's not that it's being driven by one company or CSR box or anyone else. It's largely under the CEO's water mandate of UN Global Compact. This is a brand agnostic platform where multiple entities are coming together. So that's about collaboration, and happy to inform that officially Maharashtra Climate Change Cell has made us a nodal agency in Nashik to talk about municipal level collaboration for futuristic climate related programs. So this is a good starting point for us where government has come on board. Now talking about a scalable program which can become a more of a from the solution lens. So we did a pilot in Vadodara with Vadodara Municipal Corporation where in few urban vegetable markets there was a lot of wastage coming in the morning and evening. When vegetable markets wind up their business, you have a lot of wastage, foliage on the roads. So what we did, we worked with a couple of technical experts and a few SHG women groups there. We got them trained through expert agencies, and now we are using this entire vegetable market waste to create biocompost, aerobic biocomposting unit. A couple of units have been installed in multiple locations, where these women have to dedicate 1 hour, 2 hours per day just to collect the vegetable waste and make it part of the process to put in those bins. Then everything is being taken care by nature itself. So this composting then is being sold on premium rate as a brand Kanchan, which you will see in Bharat Care's stall as well. If in market 5 kg biocomposting is being sold at 35-40 rupees, this is being sold at 60-70-80 rupees because there is women entrepreneurship take on this. This is providing livelihood to women. So one, we are taking care of the wastage. Secondly, we are providing livelihood to this women, and then we are also upscaling these units for next level venture where a couple of these SHGs can become the nursery units, not just the biocomposting unit. We started with 3 units in Vadodara. Happy to say that by the end of this March, there will be 25 into 3, 75 such units in all India. By March 2026, we already have the funding in place to have to cover 100 cities of India to have the same. So this is all about providing scale of solutions which is working in the right direction and probably helping in some way to build resilience as well as provide livelihood support to these women who are getting 7,000 to 8,000 rupees per month as an additional income by contributing just 1 hour, 1 to 2 hours per day. So yeah, that's all. Thank you very much.
Two more points I wanted to just touch upon.
Yes.
One, are you seeing in your CSR landscape that you are in, people getting more interested in urban development issues? What is the trend, and can you give us some examples of where you've seen some new people wanting to invest in urban development? Second, what do you think can be done to get more people on urban development?
Yeah, so good pointers, and these are a couple of insights which have come in our last 18 months conversation from the boardroom to CSR heads that there's a lot of hunger to fund climate resilience project in urban areas. Giving you an example that when we started talking to a couple of corporates about transforming existing government public infra buildings, like whether it's hospital, CSC hospital in urban center or community health center or a large public building. How do we create them a better and greener space? How do we bring down the heat index of those buildings so that they don't have to spend a lot of money on AC installation or cooling system and other things. So there's a lot of interest which has come up from the funder side that, yeah, these kind of projects are required, and there's a willingness from the board side to take up projects in urban area. A lot many other ideas which we are working on and where we have seen a lot of interest coming from the companies that, yes, they are interested to fund in urban areas. The interest has definitely gone up. And one thing, because traditionally we have been funding education, healthcare programs, there's a drastic change which we have seen that most of the CSI now realize that healthcare is being taken care by government and government programs a lot. There's a drastic improvement on the government side in terms of services. So we are seeing the shifting trend where now interest is emerging for climate resilience and urban resilience project. I forgot the second question, sorry.
What can we do to get more CSR to fund?
Good. I think it's all about helping them better understand what are the opportunities in the urban area, because and secondly, bringing government stakeholders on board. The biggest challenge which we see and all of us do face in our usual program design is that how do you work with the multiple agencies operating on urban planning? You have a state department, you have city level urban development authority, and then you have municipal corporation in the urban area. And they don't talk to each other on multiple fronts. एक डिपार्टमेंट नाली खोदता है, दूसरा सड़क खोदता है, और तीसरा उसके ऊपर आगे कुछ और कर देता है. So this is the biggest problem in urban area where they don't talk to each other, and there is a really, we are missing on the planning side. And the process of even the execution of models from the government side itself is really devastating. When you look at urban expansion happening, when you look at road infra being created, a lot of dust to everything else which is happening in urban area, that's because of the entire process itself. So how do we really work with them and help them better understand that it can be done in a better way? So help sitting with government and probably bringing them on the same page, that's the biggest challenge. And if you are able to probably find a solution for that, it's easier to help the private sector understand that there is a way to invest in this. And that's where corporate is really shying away to partner with urban bodies, because कभी किसी और का transfer हो रहा है, कभी कोई और minister change हो रहा है, तो priorities do change, and that becomes a roadblock. Yeah.
Interesting. Thanks for that insight, Bhomik. So if I were to summarize one, you're beginning to see the trend of people wanting to fund urban, but one of the key challenges and the key anchor for funding urban is climate resilience, right? And making sure urban ecosystems are resilient, and there's a strong environmental angle, to that. It is not the same as education, health. The key anchor in urban is environment. The key anchor is infrastructure. The key anchor is about utilities, waste, water, all of that stuff. The second is working in a rural area, you have lesser stakeholders to worry about. You can go straight to the panchayat. You can engage with the local NGO. Your work is done. Whereas in urban, you are too many players kind of to deal with, so it takes a little more of an effort, and hence there's a little bit of a barrier to kind of overcome, and that's something for us to kind of keep in mind as we go along. Since we are sharing examples, I want some of the CSRs here also kind of share some of the work as we go along, and I'm going to start by volunteering our friends from CGI, who I know have done some interesting work in the urban space. So why don't you introduce yourself a little bit and talk about the work you've done.
Thank you. Surendran here from CGI, and I manage the CSR and ESG for CGI. Thank you for putting this or sharing, Shayan's also about what urban development is. There are a couple of initiatives which I could relate to what we have done in CGI. One such is on CCTVs for public safety. Which is in association with the police department in implementing CCTVs in the public spaces, mainly concerning for women's safety. Then we do also associate with another organization on public audits for, again, women's safety and giving suggestions for the policy. This is with the BPAC. Then we do waste management on the biogas generation. A couple of units have been set up in Bangalore and Chennai, one in Koramangala as well. couple of initiatives are seen as regular initiatives, but as you spoke about urban development, I could connect that to urban development is urban forest creations, then lake rejuvenations inside the city, then public space beautification. Now, how do we connect that to improve the quality of city, or how is it seen? So the organization that we associate with talks more about how people come to the city from outside, either from other cities or from other countries. When we take them out for city tour, can we make the city more visibly appealing? Now, we initially thought that this is a public space beautification where you just go paint. But the way it is projected from the other side is to show how even painting over the public walls is beautifying or giving that city on the urban development. Um, yeah, these are few initiatives that we do. Yes. Right. See, that we did with an organization called Sahas, where it's again a collaborative project. So we were not the only partner. We had multiple partners over there. And the entire Kormangla's waste generated did not go out of Kormangla. The concept was that can we keep the waste that is generated in the ward not go out of the ward? And with that concept, we funded the infrastructure to manage that and generate biogas, and that biogas was given to a nearby restaurant. While the gas, we did it a model of community kitchen, can we give it, that we were able to successfully implement in Chennai, where the gas that was generated went to a community kitchen, which again provided food for the community. But in Bangalore, it had a bit of commercial angle to it, but not too much commercialized. But the NGO was able to manage. The entire infrastructure was supported by CJ and the working as well.
Super. I have a few more questions, but I'll come back. Rumi, should I volunteer you now? One, your vision, and I know you've talked about climate environment quite deeply, especially in the new role, or role for 3 years now. But what is that you're doing in this space, and how does urban development fit into your CSR strategy from the current organization? I would also like you, because I know your association with NASSCOM Foundation for a long time. So if you can also touch upon a little bit about how industry associations, could play a role when we talk about things like urban development, because I'm sure this is something you all also talk about collectively, as well. This impacts all of you. Yeah.
Sure. My name is Rumi Mitra. I work for EY Global Delivery Services. We are based in 10 countries, India being one of the largest countries, as most of you. So just to get to the point, from urban engagement perspective, like most of us that we do in corporate responsibility or sustainability, pursuing the net zero goal and so on, we combine a couple of factors that is important for us, which is where are we, what is material for us, how do we impact the space where we operate, how do we engage our key stakeholders, and how do we make a lasting, visible, tangible impact. So these are the frames within which we all operate. Now, in there, I think, unlike the non-urban areas, where I believe most of us have a clearer goal, the urban areas has been a bit fuzzy, I must say, and I'll be very honest with you internally. Couple of problems is what Bhumik identified, and Satwa's team and Omidya team, everybody's aware, who has been working in the urban space. Now, in the urban space, and I'll quickly just say, from much of our work has been, or collaborations has been in the more visible areas. So we are in Bangalore, we are in Chennai, we are in Telangana, we are in Kerala. We work with urban issues of waste management, so where segregation of waste is a possibility in communities who are not aware of segregation of waste. We work in lakes in Bangalore and a couple of other places where prominent lakes, we try to ensure that they are kept clean. We support that initiative, hydrophonic systems that can have a long-term impact on lakes. We work on urban beautification projects. where we fund those beautification as well as get our people to support those areas. Now, these are things that I think are common across many of our organizations, and we engage through our people, employee volunteering, as well as some of the funding that is required. But I think if you have to take a step back and say, really, what would we have liked to do? Adopting a lake these days are very dicey also, I must tell you that there's a lot of conflict between community and the intermediaries and politics and all of that, and many of us want to stay away from that. We are not in the business of pleasing the state government or the central government or anybody. So, well, not in this sense, as you understand. So, you're not really mandated to do it. Then you take a step back and say, if you're looking at our biggest of the urban problems, you think about NCR, you're thinking pollution. Now, what is the role that you can technically play? And sometimes it becomes that, well, you be a grant maker and give a good grant, and the rest will be taken care of. Now, this narrative doesn't work for us, for example, and we are often confused then, where do we put in our monies and our people and our expertise and our strength to make a difference? And that's where I think we see the biggest challenge, because we may not be putting a support on an infrastructure project unless it is for a community that requires a lot of hand-holding and support to move from a very poor waste management practice to a reasonably good long-term waste management outcome, for example. Or, for example, as a company, we have a goal for zero waste to landfill, which means we take care of our e-waste management processes, we take care of the solid waste management, along with the landlords where the buildings that we operate. Now, if we have to take this to the market, then the implications are very, not clear. Let's say that you're looking at how do we improve the waste to zero waste processes, then there are only a couple of partners who are build infrastructure and they're recycling the waste in the right way. So there is also a limitation of opportunities in where you can engage. Now, ideally, urban greens are everybody's favorite, and we are no exceptions, because it gives us that gratification of being a part of something that is visible, makes us happy and all of that. But I don't think it has really become a larger play for us. For example, we do a lot of work in the Lal Bagh Botanical Garden because they have a big need. They have been sustainable. They have a simple governance system, which is very important. The horticulture department, the state does not interfere. The horticulture department does what they have to do. So we invest a lot with our resources and our people, making sure at least that green lungs in the heart of Bangalore with its history and legacy is retained. And we follow that same thinking principle in other places because it is less complex, less stakeholder decision making, and so on. So the point I'm coming to is that, of course, we can list some more examples in Kerala or what we do in Chennai or what we do in Pune on the similar lines. But I think what we have always felt is that we want to do more. We do not know where we should put in our monies or put in our efforts and put in our partnerships, bring it together. So I think that's one of the things that probably would help to say that, well, what can we come together with and work with stakeholders who are not inefficient. It's frustrating to be working with stakeholders in the government who are inefficient, or who just don't care. And they just feel, well, you have the monies, that's fine, the rest will take care. But they don't. So I think some of these things lead to a bit of a disappointment, and one steps back and says, give the money to other places where you can do more.
That's a very, very, very interesting point. I think you're almost, kind of double-clicking on what Bhaumik said about the fact that, it's not like there is not interest to fund urban development work. There seems to be reasonable interest, and I'm sure, as more of the corporate speak here, we'll hear that. But you're saying there are too many friction points, and the friction points are far lesser, in rural areas. In urban areas, the friction points seem to be high. So if you're able to resolve that, then there's an opportunity to bring in more money into, this ecosystem potentially. So just the second point I wanted to, for you to touch upon is, like I said, because you've had a long association with NASSCOM Foundation, you were on the leadership board. Is there a role for someone like NASSCOM Foundation to help reduce the friction points? Because collective industry action, is that something?
It is not my place to speak on behalf of NASCOM Foundation. However, I will attempt to make some suggestion from the industry perspective. The answer is yes. But you see, any collaboration, frankly, is not easy. Getting a platform with like-minded partners who have similar goals or who would be inspired to support a similar goal is the toughest part. And I think the answer is a little complex. It's a leadership issue. You got to have the right leader who can, bring people together with that goal, keeping in mind that different organizations come with different DNA and different expectation from an outcome from a collaboration like that. And if you bring people together, then why not? And second, I think in a collaboration, you have to be very conscious about sharing credits effectively. Which is very simple. You have to be conscious about whose logos you have put up there, how you are respecting all the logos out there, the other stakeholders that are involved in the play, whose logos may not be there, but they are working in the back end to make projects successful. So many of these pieces needs to come together for a collaboration to be successful. And if you really address this, because this is the software area, it has got nothing to do with which issue you pick up, actually.
Okay.
Because you will have smart people who want to do smart things, and something that is visibly going to make a difference to each of the cities and places and issues they want to support. The government's 8 missions, 9 climate missions. You pick something that aligns, but bringing people together and getting them on the platform and ensuring that everybody's idea is sort of, I'm not saying 100% democratic and something like that, but making sure that everybody is coming together is important for any collaboration to take place. And I think any organization attempting that needs to be able to do that.
Yeah, and I think you can potentially use a platform like NASCOM or even friends at ICC to actually negotiate better with the government. I think the Godavari initiative that Bhaumik talked about is a good example where almost a new secretariat has been formed, which is now empowered to go negotiate with the stakeholders across states levels, district levels and stuff. It creates a different, kind of a model than each one of us trying to kind of attempt to do this, one by one. I'll keep switching, whoever wants to represent HCL between the two of you. If you were to, again, introduce yourself and talk about what HCL is doing from the perspective of, urban development, how does it fit into your story? And any thoughts on what we've shared so far?
Thanks. Hi everyone, I'm Prakriti from HCL Foundation and I take care of CSR engagements here. I want to bring focus on the concept of siloed approach to funding of development projects. Very proud to share at HCL we do just the opposite. We have a very strong integrated approach to funding development projects. One example I would love to give is about ghost nets. Have you heard this term before, anyone? Ghost nets? Yes, ghost nets, nothing to do with ghosts. So this is about retrieving abandoned fishing gear from the oceans, bringing it on land and involving the local communities to repurpose those nets, create toys out of it, playing nets and so on. So what it does, it definitely cleans our oceans. It gives a livelihood to the people on land, and we are also creating awareness drives around it. We are involving volunteers, HCL Tech employees. Just last month, we had the International Coastal Cleanup Day, and around 18,000 kilos of waste material was brought on land across 8 points, coastal points, including involvement of 13,000 volunteering hours. So this is the kind of approach we are following, very integrated, and it involves skill development, it involves generation of livelihoods, conservation of oceans, and definitely moving towards SDG 11 sustainable cities. So that is one thing I want to bring attention on. Handing over to Manu.
Yeah. So in addition, we also have a program called My Clean City, which was earlier branded as Clean Noida. So we've rebranded that into My Clean City because we are
Is it multi-cities now?
Yes.
Okay.
So that's the vision.
Yeah.
So we've expanded to Greater Noida now. So My Clean City is again a solid waste management program where we're working with more than 100 RWAs, and we've created an integrated command center for the Noida Authority, where the waste can be tracked right from generation till the full life cycle basically gets tracked there. And apart from that, adding on to the environmental action, we have a flagship program called Harit, where we are doing afforestation as well as water conservation. So happy to share that around 8 lakh samplings have been planted till now in around 230 plus acres of land. These are all urban areas,
Wow.
mostly.
And over how many years is this?
This is approximately 5 to 6 years. And very, very proud to share that at HCL Foundation, Harit has seen more than 100% budget allocation year on year. That's the growth that I'm talking about. So the focus of HCL Foundation on environment action has been phenomenal. And there is afforestation work also happening, water conservation work also happening, and more than 3,000 acres of water rejuvenation, water body rejuvenation we have done till now. This is also more than 80% would be urban areas. Just talking about Gautam Buddha Nagar, there were more than 100 allocated water bodies in Gautam Buddha Nagar, but we went to field and saw that there were hardly any because of landfills and then local encroachment. So we're working with the authorities and conserving some of them now, identifying them and tracking everything there and rejuvenating them. And till now, more than 773 billion liters of water has been harvested in these 3,000 acres of water body.
No, that's fantastic. Congratulations again on on all the good work. So two follow-on questions. One comment in terms of what I understand in summary is that your allocation to urban development or funding projects in urban has been increasing because of the Harit example you gave. So the allocation grows. Second, the points that was made here of the engagement with the, especially in your projects like My Clean City and others. What have been your learnings of working with local bodies, or the government, and the friction points that we just talked about? Do you see that, and what has been, what are the things that what have you done to overcome some of that stuff?
So completely agree. So urban body, when we look at urban locations, we see that there are a lot of stakeholders involved. And the first thing that we take an approach is signing a long-term MOU with the apex body, be it at a state level or a district level, because that really helps us and involve some of the key people in the field as well. So we do a lot of these activities where we invite the relevant stakeholders to the ground so that the community is aware. And one of the resistance that we found when we started doing afforestation in Gautam Buddha Nagar was that the locals felt that HCL is coming to take their land. Because that's the initial thing that they think. But we make it very, very clear that the land belongs to the government. We are just doing an MOU with them, do the afforestation, maintain that for 3 to 5 years, and then hand it back to the community. So the community engagement is also very, very important and at the head of the arrow when we look at all our projects.
Very nice. So there's a
Correct, multi-stakeholder connect that we do.
Wonderful. So coming back to this side now, First Source. If you can introduce and also talk about some of the work you're doing potentially, and how does urban development fit into?
Definitely. I'm Shankara here. I'm part of First Source. I take care of the CSR. First is what I've been saying in my last 15 years work in Cognizant and First Source. There have been so many grassroots movements happening, like what HCL is telling. HCL Harit is a very famous program of tree plantation. So many things are happening across various cities. The cities are started getting a tagline, like indoor, very clean city. But why it is not spreading out? That's the question. Why it is not happening? Like if you see in Bangalore, Agli Indian came up. It is a no-man forum where they give you a project idea, you go and beautify. All the bridges were beautified because of them. We have volunteered for the program. And there is no one controlling that. The Agli Indian is making everyone to understand that we are making impact positively, negatively in a city. Yeah. So how we can change that attitude? So that is one aspect. Second is on the key challenges which you brought up.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking, I've spoken to Suren, and also now we have created a community in Chennai. We have a group of CSR group. We have started to start engaging, discussing on urban development aspect. How we can jointly put together Everyone, in the same place where HCL has planted, opposite I have planted 5,000 trees. So I am thankful that my house is there. And surrounding me, I have 30,000 trees. So 14,000 HCL planted, 5,000 I planted, and RR only planted 2,000 this side. And another company, tech company, planted 4,000. So it's happening. But I will be very happy when we know that as a CSR community in Chennai or Bangalore, we have planted 1 million trees. That gives a huge, because every company will not come with the same set of funding. It all varies together. I have, this is the limit for me.
Yeah.
But when we put together and tell, so when NASCOM came during COVID, it threw lots of innovation on urban management because they don't want fund. Fund the government is giving on, many companies have already donated extra funds during COVID. They want people.
Yeah.
They were not able to win. So we set up a 60-member virtual helpline. And it has saved 17,000 lives in Bangalore, because Bangalore government was struggling without management. So the 60 people, we set up an exclusive control room and we started this project. And if you see inclusion, we work with Ramp Me City in Bangalore.
Sorry,
Ramp Me City.
Yeah, that's an interesting initiative. Can you talk a little more about?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
there's Clean My City and then there's a Ramp My City.
Yeah. Most of this project which is coming in India is reactive projects, not proactive. So because someone is facing challenges. I saw a LinkedIn post with lots of issues in one of the prominent theatre which is not inclusive, even though they have put up that it is inclusive. There was a big conversation happening there. So if, for example, now Pratik has taken a goal of making every city inclusive. He has taken Bangalore. We have also worked with him. What we did was to make sure the employees understand the challenge of inclusive in our city. We made them to do the RACI of the public buildings. See how a senior citizen can walk or a person with wheelchair can go in. No. In many of the public health centers or police stations, it's not happening. Can we take one goal in one city? Maybe Satwa can be part of that, CSR box can be there. Take one city, one goal. So I have given a tagline as WIN. Waste, inclusion, nature-based solution. 3 things can be taken up. And we do in a large scale, like maybe a ward-based goals.
Yeah.
25 wards in Bangalore have been made inclusive with public places. We all can fund it. We all have, because we can fund it separately. That's not a problem. But the focus should be on achieving the 25 wards to be inclusive and bring up. Now you spoke about healthcare. In Telangana, Hyderabad, for the last 3 years, we are supporting the multi-speciality health camps for the slum dwellers and neglected communities. Now, the next step was, what the challenges the NGOs are facing in this. One is the follow-up of the patients, because they don't have document or database of these patients of the cities, though they are not able to follow up. Now, we did a pro bono volunteering in giving them a portal. Now, it launched last month. Now, this portal will have all the data of the patients and they can retrieve any time of what has happened to them. So, now, maybe CJ may also be doing some tech project. This is, they don't want to waste this time. So, where I can know that I can share this with someone and save their time so that they can work on some other important tech intervention. So, I had a good startup point which was discussed here in the report. Many startups have come. I don't know how many people know. There is a new aspect where most of the health issues are coming due to vitamin deficiencies. And a company has come up with a innovation of sprays. So no need to eat tablets and all. Every day it is a daily supplement. Spray it, it go inside. Now they have given us a launch pad, they have given 2,000 sprays to us, and we are taking it to the underrepresented communities, old age homes, and giving awareness on vitamin deficiency and giving this sprays to them. How we can make this large scale available?
So that sharing part is very, very critical.
And Ullu app has came. For the female, they came up with 10,000 free subscription for us, for our employees. We are discussing that. So that NGO, that startup has come up with opportunities where a female citizen can know where the accessible toilets are there, private toilets are available. From the apps, they can take.
Wonderful.
So beautiful things are coming up. My only like, maybe this session is beautifully brought in the topic and importance. How collaboratively we can do it. We should not like a separate company branding or something like. We, a CSR community, has created this change in the city. One city, if you make an impact in one area, amazing work.
Absolutely. No, great point. And, I think I just want to kind of touch upon that while environment came in as a big thing, I want to just, inclusion is another very big piece in the, when you think about, the city, angle. And I know there's a lot of work, a lot of you are also doing on things like road safety and other things, which is also critical stuff. But I just wanted to pick up that one additional point.
Just wanted to add on the technology part. How can technology? So currently we are working with Bangalore Climate Action Cell on including technology for them. And also we've done a couple of government-related projects on pro bono to improve technology. So how can we leverage the tech skills also to improve the web interfaces for government to be more inclusive?
And that's been a big ask from every time we have done a roundtable like this and we had a government person, their immediate response was, we understand all that, can you help us with technology, right? So they were like always talking about saying, we understand we have friction, we have all of that stuff, but can you, as corporate, bring technology? Their expectation of the CSR, the ask from the other side, by the way, is heavily on the tech.
We were able to successfully implement it with AM, Atal Innovation Mission, which is at the central level.
Yeah.
So with that, we feel that it could be replicated with multiple stakeholders, even in the city at the local level also. Everyone has their own IT team, and not everyone are also equipped with enough infrastructure or even licenses to even upgrade their systems. Tech could, again, any intermediaries who could help in navigate this one. We work with NASCOM Foundation to even bring in that requirements and analyzing those requirements. But I think it is possible to give that touch to government to improve their visibility from public involvement perspective.
No, that's great. And I think that communication and linkage, because that are some of the skills that, beyond monies that we can also kind of bring. So from a Vivo perspective, do you want to introduce and also share a little bit, does urban development fit into your story? And, how are you thinking about it?
Hi everyone, I'm Geeta. I am from Vivo. We make smartphones. It's quite interesting. All of us are trying to do good here, right? But all of us are running in a different direction. We are very, very new to the CSR journey. We are a very young organization. We completed 10 years in August in India, and we have recently become profitable, and we have recently started investing in CSR also. And given what you guys have done, we would have done minuscule. But we've started on this journey. But what I have learned during this time, in the last couple of years that we've started investing, is very close to what you just said, is that, we all have beautiful presentations. We go back and tell our management, hey, we did some great work. But at the end of it, I think it's just stupid. We are all trying to make beautiful presentations, trying to make ourselves happy, and trying to make our management happy. And we, at the end of it, are not really making any change. It is very, very small. I think we need to come together better. I don't know how. I don't have as much experience as a lot of you guys in this particular field to give a solution, but we need to come together better, and which actually can make a collective impact on the society. Have we done stuff? Yes, we've done a lot of stuff. We've done things in parts. For instance, we try and get these ideas from people who really matter, who are really living this. So we work with students and try and get ideas from them on how they can make an impact. So last year, we ran a competition called Vivo Ignite, and the winner last year was a bunch of students who had ideas on how they can make the streets safer, and how can they use energy in a different way. Now these are children these are children from class 8 to class 12. Now these are children who are from a different era altogether. We are fossils in front of them. But they have challenges which we can't even think of. And they are growing with those challenges. Can we really, but my problem, I got them, I gave them a nice reward, But next time I went back to them, they had dismantled the project. And they probably used the money to fund their education. That project never saw the day of light. Can we take it to a logical conclusion? Can we really hone their vision better? That's a challenge that I face. But again, I'm still saying it is my direction. For me, sitting around this table, the bigger challenge that I see is that we don't have the same vision. And is there a way that we can get that together?
Thank you for that. And I think the biggest challenge in not just in the corporate space, but also I'm sure there are many NGOs who will also agree that, getting people together on a common agenda, is not very easy. That's something now Siddharth is attempting with a bunch of, collective people. And you call India climate what? So why don't you answer how you're, collaborative, kind of putting solutions to this. It's hard. You can bring in synchronization. You can, and that's what I've seen at least NASSCOM do in a slightly better way, where you're able to tell everybody what's going on, publish list of, let's say, these are the opportunities available, not available. So you can at best create some level of alignment and synchronization, but deep collaboration takes a lot of effort. And I don't think that it's too early. The CSR law itself is less than 10 years old. So it's too early to expect, IT industry didn't collaborate. We're talking about NASSCOM after 40 years of existence of the industry, right? It doesn't happen immediately, and and there are, they have, so it's not easy, it's not a solvable problem, forget about us, people in the UN sitting there and saying, how the hell do we work together as countries, right? So it's not easy, it's a difficult problem, but many good attempts have been done, and, I think we should talk about things that have worked for you guys, as examples, give back some hope to this group.
Yeah, no, just picking up from what you said about the direction, I don't think so we are running in different directions, maybe we are taking different routes. Probably we want to get at the same place. I think there is collective momentum building up, all of us know, and that's why all of us are here. I guess we want to do good for the climate, for the environment, and for the people as well. But I think I agree to your point that there are lack of demonstrated pilots, or maybe, bringing people together, and that's what at the ICC we are trying to do. But from the lens of the philanthropist, because we see that, philanthropy can act as a capital, whether it is through individual or through CSRs, because that capital is flexible, has a cushion to be, and also it can be innovative, can be deployed in a manner which other capitals can't, and also help to unlock other capitals, whether it is public or private. Like yesterday, we had a session on blended finance. Now, the thing is, we've started having those conversations. I think that's a ray of hope that we are getting on the table. Now, coming to the point about how we are doing it, so there are three ways. One is, of course, to move capital.
And any examples from an urban point of view?
Yeah, so I'll come to that. And the second thing is to surface those pilots, because we keep talking about, we need those solutions, but where are those solutions? And that is through our platform, Earth Exponential. We are trying to, bring those pilots or bring those solutions to the fore, that these are credible partners who have been doing great work in their domains, in their fields, and there is a way to then it can be scaled up, and there is a replicability also. So we are trying to do that. It's a slow process, but then I think we are increasingly partnering with more and more stakeholders and trying to get them together. That's one. Second is to also look at some intervention areas. I think somebody was mentioning about probably certain areas that need those interventions and have those problem statements built in. So a lot of work is already done. What we need to do is we don't need to reinvent the wheel, but just harness. So for example, if this toolkit is already there, we need to try and harness that kind of pointers and then see what kind of good solutions can come out of it. And that is what we are doing through the platform as well. Some solutions from our side, from the city and urban perspective, have been also looking at certain vulnerable groups. Like for example, street vendors. They are often overlooked or not even considered as part of, when we talk about, of course they're part of the planning, but then what are the solutions existing for them is not actually considered. So one of the projects that we have done with Hunarshara Foundation is basically looking at the street vendors and also looking at the infrastructure, not just, and when we say that, these projects have to be integrated in a manner that we don't just talk about climate resilience, but also look at their livelihoods. And resilience is, of course, building their livelihoods, because then it will help them to kind of, combat the impacts of climate. So this is a really great project. by Hunarshala, which we have on the platform. Another one is with MHT, Mahila Housing Trust. Again, it is working with women in formal settlements and trying to work on their livelihoods, trying to enhance the income. So those kind of pilots, again, we are trying to put it on the platform. What we do essentially is, because a lot of times in the CSOs, the major challenge with what we have seen is how to articulate in the right manner, because climate has become such a kind of a jargonized kind of terminology that's very difficult. That how do you, everybody feels like a FOMO. How do we get there? How do we bring that proposal? So what we are trying to do is simplify it, let them know that this is a lens that you put in. You are doing great work. You are deeply entrenched with your communities. You understand your communities better. We can only bring the lens to you. We can strengthen you with the, say, results framework part of it, de-diagonalize it, and then put it on the platform, which is easy for even the funders. Even sometimes, like I think Sir was mentioning about the challenges, and even Rumi mentioned about, how do we look at the solutions, because there aren't. But I think to understand the whole length and breadth of that climate challenge is to also look at demystifying those solutions for them. So I think that's the attempt that we are trying to do, and I guess collaborations are always difficult, but I think at least we are reaching to that point when we are recognizing that they are important, and there is a way forward in terms of developing. So it's a positive, I would say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, and I think directionally it's right, but I think that his point is valid, that speed is important as we kind of make that happen. Another very good urban project that I recently came across, which I think was very cool, was the ISTRI project that Udyam runs, which is really about converting Istriwalas across cities from coal to using either electricity or the gas, the CNG kind of stuff. And I think it's a very, very, very interesting model, very low cost. In 10K, you're able to kind of shift, and there's a higher income, all of that stuff, and it's very, very sustainable as well. And in some sense has a heat stress angle, has a livelihood angle, has a climate angle, all of that stuff, right? And it's something we all can relate to, also being, people who are living in urban centers. So quite a few interesting stuff happening in this space. What we did was we just, we built out a, like I said, a simple thing saying, there could be different areas you might be interested in. It could be art and culture, it could be waste management, public infrastructure, community development, energy efficiency. And depending on the budgets that you may have, we could then recommend certain projects, for you all. And we could also work with you guys on taking this to your platform, and making sure that it's available in that way, so that we can further enhance the, investments in the urban development space. And the idea is to reduce friction and increase, the work, from that perspective. Right? I know we're pushing the time a little bit. We're well past 1:30. And it's lunchtime, and other sessions are also running in parallel. So I just want to open the floor for, if anybody else who have not spoken have something very important to say, you may raise your hand now. And be very brief, please. No, this is relevant to multiple. We've looked at projects across cities, not just for metropolitan cities, but also tier 2,
there
tier
are
3
even
cities.
tier 4 cities, we can call them, right? The very small towns you call. So are these projects applicable to even in those level? Almost it look like a rural part, but in the definition we call it like tier 4 cities, am I right?
Yeah.
So what is your say on that? Like,
would the problems be very different between? I mean, some of them would be similar.
I think the range of problems, the scale of the problem might change, right?
Okay.
So I think if you look at smaller cities, they probably have not been congested right now, so there might not be a mobility intervention needed. But then there might definitely be sanitation, water treatment. Those are definitely very universal issues that are coming up.
the problem will also be smaller, the funding will also be lesser in those regions, am I right?
Depends on the governance. So I think what we have not spoken about here is while we are doing this physical interventions, I think the governance mechanisms also need to be strengthened. So depending on what I would also suggest is, while we are doing CSR interventions, to also put a component of it in improving the governance mechanisms.
Why I'm saying this is, metropolitan cities are the big emitter of CO2. Am I right? We all know in terms of climate perspective. And in fact, tier 3, tier 4 or the rural areas are the saviors.
Yes.
Am I right?
Yes.
So they are less polluter, they emit less CO2. So can we focus more on, the project can be more focused towards those regions, so the ultimate beneficiary will be like tier 1, who are the big emitters, am I right? But some has to be savior in the whole world. So I feel that the focus
it's a bit of a kind of an interesting dilemma, because we need to also keep in mind that CSRs invest where there is a bit of an area of interest, right? So one of the reasons why they talked about Noida, they talked about Bangalore, they talked about Hyderabad, all that stuff is because those cities matter to them. While there is, but whereas, for example, someone like an HT Parekh, who's a philanthropist, for them, they don't have an office to worry about. They are willing to go where the problem is higher, right? So all of the CSRs are today also distributing their resources from where areas matter to them, and then some part of their resources outside in other areas as well. But geographical focus, is also in some sense. I mean, again, it's a guidance. You don't have, you could expand it, in some form, but there is business interest. There is a business interest to improving Bangalore, improving Hyderabad, improving Koramangala, improving, Whitefield. There's a little bit of a business interest, But thankfully, a lot of the corporates are also now mature enough to say, I can have a portfolio. I can do partly here, partly there, type of stuff. But the geographical focus will, in some sense remain, as we go along. One thing is about also the geographical focus. There are solutions that exist, right? But I don't think so there is a proper mapping that has been done in terms of, I think probably UN Water Mandate and IIT are trying that in terms of the river basins. But overall, essentially, we don't have enough mapped solutions in those geographical areas which can be scaled up, which has the potential that you know that, okay, this solution can. And that's the challenge of the civil society. We have to up the game if we need to move the needle on that front. Okay, last point, sorry.
And as like point of view of CSR engagements, wherever HL employees are there, we ensure that they have access to the projects, they can volunteer there and can add value.
That's
to
another
those
important,
projects.
because engagement with employees and stakeholders is a key point as well. You can take up the discussion, kind of offline as well, right? I know the room is getting heated up a little bit now on discussion and debate, but we have a bit of a time to keep from a lunch perspective. So Priya, and then him, and then I'll give you one. You will have the last word. Yeah. Go ahead, Priya.
Hello everyone. It was a really wonderful discussion. I'm here with, I'm representing Donate Card. It's a social enterprise. It was lovely to hear the voices in the room from the CSR perspective and also from the implementers. I would like to, we largely work on disaster. So one of the key areas which definitely affects, no matter what the geography is, it affects everybody. And that's the time when the uncertainty is the highest and the impact can be created, multifold. The communities need us most at that time, and we have somehow cracked the code for the initial 72 hours. So we have a service level agreement where we reach the ground with in-kind support. We do not transfer funds directly. We provide them in-kind support and mapping it exactly to their requirement. So I would really like to collaborate and see how we can work together, because it's the action, the immediate action that is required. It's definitely an ecosystem effort. No single entity can do it on their own. But since last 8 years of operations and working on 130 plus disasters, something that we have realized is when the disaster strikes, no matter where it does and what scale it is, it's not that time, we do not have that time to reach out to the corporates at that moment to seek funds. And definitely, the collaboration is a tricky space, as we have been discussing. We would love to have a fund structure which, can act as a corpus where we have the funds readily available, and then we can deploy those funds in those moments of need.
I think the good news is, Priya, the number of disasters that are beginning to happen in Chennai, Bangalore and all, we will need, I think we'll now get used to it, saying, अगली बार गणपति के लिए ये रखो types, next time we'll say अगली बार, Whitefield का anyway होने ही वाला है अभी, flooding, so why don't you keep some funds type of stuff, right? So I think it's coming up.
Not sure if it's a good news,
unfortunately.
but yeah, it's there. Yes. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Very briefly, sir.
Hi, I'm Sumit from Vivo. I'm just trying to understand the entire discourse which has happened. We have not discussed about existing government initiative, JNURM and Smart City. How fair they have done over last 10 years, and if there are certain gaps created which we are trying to fill through the CSR resources or capacity. So, that kind of evaluation also, if
It's
Satwa
available.
report
We have it. We are very happy to share with
separately,
you.
okay. Yeah.
Please,
yeah.
and we are very happy to share some of the
Yeah.
results. And some of this has been taken up from those initiatives already.
Okay.
Let's look at Jal Jeevan scheme, right, which is very focused towards water. It reports 50% underutilization over the last few years of its allocation. The thing with this, while the government has the capital to deploy and there's tons of capital available, the building up of projects to access that capital is where implementation, like funders like us, come into picture, right? We from a catalytic pool, you from probably more of an intervention and implementation perspective. And I think that's the role very specifically that needs to be played.
Yeah, thank you. Hi, my name is Ayan. I'm from JSO Foundation.
Which foundation?
JSO Foundation, we work in AI and education. There's a responsible for AI for Youth program with NEGD, so we were the implementing partners for that.
Okay.
What I want to understand is, since the last 1.5 days, I've been listening to a lot of conversations. The two key takeaways, I think we also reflected, one being collaborations and partnerships, the other being the friction points. So since we have that, like friction points is something that I'm being seeing as a common point of it. Do citizen action groups or something like that kind of influence, or somebody has done that? For example, if there is a issue of potholes, people just come up and do that. There's no resistance from any urban body. They just take things in their hand, and then there's a back action from the government to do that. Does that kind of an activism help in influencing these programs faster? Do you think somebody has done that?
What does UCAN stand for? Can you expand, Siddharth?
So they are effective in the short term, right? I mean, even citizens would have a fatigue to it, right? Their job is not to do this thing. Their job is to. So I think UCAN's perspective is we need to build those systems while you do the short term things. These are important because these are, I think, ma'am said here, right? You have to respond to a disaster. But in the long term, I think through the CSR funding also have some aspect which will strengthen the government's ability to do it, right? And not just look at strengthening service delivery in the short term, but also build those systems, right?
Yeah.
So UCAN's thing is, I mean, in the long term, it's the government's job to do it. And at scale, only the government has that much sort of resources to put to solve those problems at scale.
And what does UCAN stand for? If you expand the letters, people don't know what is UCAN.
It's Urban Collective Action Network. So it's a collective of 12 organizations.
Right? So that means it's got civil society, it's got think tanks, it's got knowledge, it's got everybody, right? So there is a civil society action, kind of coming through. But it's hard. The influencing power at the, action is lower. Like, I think he also talked about the ugly Indian example, in First Source, that when he was here. That's phenomenal example of a citizen action. But it will give you certain results, right? So you need a whole bunch of players to kind of come in. On a very light note, when Aam Aadmi Party kept saying, Aam Aadmi has to do that, so one of my colleagues had come to me and said, sir, ये सब मैं करेगा तो मेरा काम कौन करेगा टाइप्स ऑफिस में तो आप मेरे पीछे पड़े रहते हो कि ये करो वो करो इफ दिस गाय सेइंग आप करो गवर्नमेंट का सपोर्ट करो तो मेरा काम कौन करेगा यहाँ पे ऑफिस में राइट सो आई थिंक इट्स इंपॉर्टेंट टू एंश्योर देयर इज पार्टिसिपेशन but I don't think solution can be expected, because some of these are also very difficult, large problems, right? I mean, water to a city takes serious amount of infrastructure effort of, tunnels, dams, all of that stuff, right? A citizen action can only sit there and say, oh, I need what? I can't build the dam, I can't bring all of that stuff together. So there are certain initiatives where citizen action helps, certain initiatives, not so much, unfortunately. I know we've really pushed the time far beyond, and there are many other interesting people who could have said a lot of other things as well, but unfortunately we are really out of time. But I want to thank you, and a big round of applause for all of you for participating and sharing. And I hope we continue this discussion on urban development. I think the summary is very clear. There is interest, there is money, especially from the technology and we've also seen from the, BFSI ecosystem. So these are the two clear sectors, industries who are very interested in funding urban development. We need, I mean, if you're an NGO, please go after these two guys. If you're an urban NGO, go after IT sector, go after BFSI, guys. These are the main guys wanting to do this, and construction, of course. And we need to reduce friction points. I think that's for the non-profit ecosystem to bring in, or players as platforms to bring in, to reduce friction points with urban. Funding rural is far easier, funding urban is a little more complicated. So we need to make sure that we reduce the friction points, and please use data, and wherever you can synchronize, start by synchronizing. Collaboration is much higher. It's like, don't jump to marriage, just first start dating, then we'll see if, marriage happens or not, right? So please, try to synchronize your efforts with people around you. Thank you very much.